An entitled Karen loses her mind at a clearance sale as this store that's closing down doesn't have the product for the $3 hand cream that she's desperately searching for. As a result, this entitled Karen even got kicked out as she started screaming at everybody in the store, all because she wasn't getting what she wanted. And I'm seriously still blown away by her attitude. Here's what happened. A popular cosmetic store is closing in my country. I went in yesterday after hearing of the closure to stock up on some hypoallergenic items, not knowing that they were already running their clear out sale, making everything 75% off. And to say the store was picked over was an understatement. I mean, it was nearly empty. I was lucky that they still had an inventory on exactly what I wanted. When I got to the front of a very long queue, a wild Karen appears out of nowhere. Cutting in front of the line that had no less than 10 people deep, she demands that they look in the back for a rose-scented hand cream that she was unable to find on the sales floor. The woman at the counter assured her that all the inventory they had was out on the floor, and that if she was unable to find the item, then they were probably sold out of it. A normal person, by the way, would accept that a store with mostly empty shelves probably does not have the inventory to fill those shelves. But not this Karen. She understood the words "we don't have it" to be the start of the conversation. The associate called out next, and as I approached the counter, Karen held out her arm to block me and said, "I'm not done yet." Karen is insistent that they find her item and will not take no for an answer. She continues to badger the employee, pulling out winning lines such as, "It's the only item I can use. You had it yesterday. I've been a customer for years. I mean, this is the third store I've been to." And then the employee with each statement just reiterates that what you see is what we have. Still not satisfied though, the Karen of course asked for a manager, refusing to move until the manager appeared. At this point, I decided to speak up. I said to her, "Could you please step aside while you wait so the line can progress?" But this question was met with her rudely telling me to mind my own effing business. Now, I've done my time in retail, and I live for the moment that somebody pulls out the F-bomb. And I'm sure that the associate, having had enough themselves, was also happy to ask at this point that she leave the store immediately for being rude to other customers. Unfortunately though, a Karen only has one mode, and that is to escalate. I have now committed the cardinal sin of making a reasonable request of a Karen, and have inadvertently made myself a target as well. She then turns back to me and starts yelling. She says, "See what you've done? I'm just trying to get some help here. Now they're throwing me out because you couldn't keep your mouth shut. If this was somebody in trouble, you would probably mind your own business, but no, you have to be a jerk because I'm just trying to get some service." A few of the customers in line join in calling her a Karen and noting that she was in fact the one who was unable to keep her mouth shut. Well, this only encouraged her to champion for her right to rose-scented hand cream. She then began to berate every customer who dared question her approach to the situation. Everybody is a jerk, everybody needs to shut up, and we just didn't understand customer service. Finally, the manager appears with a full bin of reaming hand cream. They had no less than 5 other varieties, but just no rose-scented ones that this idiot was looking for. The manager is offering an alternative from what limited stock they had in a futile attempt to de-escalate. However, Karens just don't understand de-escalation. I mean, this lady is already shaking mad over $3 hand cream and proceeds to call the manager stupid for not understanding rose, and then helpfully spells out the word. The manager then says, "Well, we're out of stock," noting that she had offered alternatives and that if none are suitable, then there is no further assistance that can be provided. She tucks the bin under the counter and then says to the Karen, "If there is nothing else that we can help you with today, then you need to leave before we're forced to make you leave." Finally, accepting defeat, this entitled Karen leaves the store, but not before knocking several products off a display table on her way out. Now, I use their hand cream and it's pretty good. I prefer the vanilla scented, as the rose scent smells almost as awful as this Karen's attitude. Yeah, I can't understand why anybody would act like that in public. Like, the secondhand cringe and embarrassment that I would feel if I saw this in person would be literally off the charts. How can anybody actually act like this in public and not feel any shame? Like, you're not ashamed that you're acting this way at all in public in front of other people? I just can't imagine being that far detached from reality to act like this and not feel like some kind of regret later on or like in the moment. So I think the original poster and the manager handled this really well, and I think that Karen should have been kicked out a lot sooner than that, because her behavior and the way she was acting was so uncalled for, and no one in that store deserved to be treated like that in the slightest. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. place. Am I the jerk for refusing to stay at my boyfriend's hotel on my girls' trip? Because right now I am very frustrated and I seriously don't know what to do. So I need to start off with a little bit of backstory just to give some context. So me and my girlfriends are planning to go to London at the end of April because one of the girls has a birthday, and for that case we decided to go to London since she always wanted to go there. We have been planning this trip since December of 2023, and I made sure to inform my boyfriend of the trip and he said he was fine. I even informed him that we might stay at a friend's place since hotels in London are a bit pricey, or we might just stay at a hotel, but it all depends on how we feel. Well, fast forward to this month, and me and my friends were on FaceTime trying to decide which hotel to reserve for the trip, and we decided on the hotel, but we were still considering staying at a friend's place still. I told my boyfriend all of this, and that's when he told me that he was also going to London with a friend of his, but he doesn't want to sleep in the same hotel room as his friend, which I fully understood, and he went ahead and asked me to reserve a hotel room for him as well, and I accepted, but I reminded him that me and the girls weren't sure if we're going to stay in a hotel, and just like I mentioned, they are pricey, and we are traveling on a budget, so staying at a friend's place is going to save us a lot of money, but we reserved a hotel just in case of anything. I then asked him which dates he was going to London, and he mentioned the same dates as me, but I just didn't think anything of it because it was just such a coincidence. He then told me that he wants me to stay with him at his hotel during my girls' trip since we are a couple, which I understand, but like I mentioned from the start, this is a trip that I planned with my girl since December, and it would be rude of me to tell them, hey, I'm going to stay with my boyfriend at his hotel during our trip, even though we planned everything together. But he said that during the day I could go and hang out with my friends, and then at night I could go to his hotel to sleep, and he thinks it doesn't make any sense for us as a couple to fly out in the same city and not stay at the same place. Well, I said no because he was not part of my plan since the beginning, and I can't just start changing everything just because he feels like he wants to go to London on those exact dates. So honestly, am I the jerk for turning him down? Because right now I seriously don't know what to do. No, I don't think you're the jerk at all, and I think it's a really big red flag that your boyfriend is suddenly going on this trip with you. Like, this guy is acting like you both planned this together and that's why you need to stay in the hotel with him, but it's like, seriously, you weren't even invited on this. It's almost like he invited himself for some like weird reason. And also, like, why would he go to this trip all of a sudden? Does he just like not trust you or something like that? And now he's trying to force you to stay in the hotel with him? Like, that's just really weird. And I know if I was in your shoes, I wouldn't want to stay at his hotel either. Like, you planned this with your girlfriends literally a year ago. You have everything plotted out and planned exactly the way you guys want to do it, and then suddenly here comes your boyfriend out of nowhere, by the way, just to tag along on a trip that you're going on with your girlfriends. Like, come on, what's going on right now? So no, in my opinion, I don't think you're the jerk for refusing to stay with your boyfriend. I think under normal circumstances where you guys like planned a vacation, this would be much different and understandable if you did stay with him. But in the meantime, I find this behavior really weird because it really seems like he's trying to ruin your plans. Am I the jerk for telling my sister that she was being very obvious when trying to hide the fact that she was pregnant? Because right now she's trying to blame me for everybody finding out. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So my sister is currently 3 months pregnant with twins, and she's already begun to develop a bump. Right now, she's only told myself, our parents, and our brother, as well as giving myself and our brother permission to tell our spouses. And we have all agreed to keep it a secret until she's ready. Well, the issue is that she's become very obvious about it, to the point where she's doing near comical things to hide it when we're around family, which has been very frequent as of late. I mean, picture the stuff that people do in sitcoms when the characters aren't pregnant but the actor is. She will cover her stomach with her purse, holding her oldest daughter in front of the bump, wearing much baggier clothes when she's typically the type to wear things that show off her figure, stuff like that. My sister's always been very fit as she is a gym rat. The bump itself doesn't even look like extra fat or anything like that, but rather it just looks like a very pronounced baby bump. If ever she has to move something from her stomach, she is very quick to hide it. So obviously many have caught on, but for the most part they all were good sports. No one ever directly asked us, but they would make hints, and I would never entertain them at all. We all gathered on Sunday for a family dinner, and my sister was holding her 2-year-old for a bit. When the little one wanted to go play, Amber then tried to cover herself with a blanket. My 30-year-old cousin then chimed in and said, "Alright, cut the dramatics. We all know what's going on." A few instantly reprimanded my cousin, while my sister turned bright red. She refused to say anything in the moment, though later quietly confirmed to our aunt, telling her to spread it around. My sister is now very upset. I agree that our cousin was was obnoxious and shouldn't have said anything, but I've also tried to be supportive and comforting. However, my sister keeps saying, I just don't know how they figured it out. And eventually, after hearing this over and over again, I finally said, sweetie, you really weren't trying hard. I respect why you wanted to wait, but by this point, it was quite obvious. Well, she got mad and tried to insist that it wasn't obvious. I said it absolutely was, and she didn't help matters by acting like she was in a sitcom. I stressed that our cousin was in the wrong, but she was also not quite as stealthy as she thought she was. Now, I was not saying that she should have done more to hide it, and I also don't think that she was wrong to hide it. But what I am saying is that the sentiment of, oh, I don't know how they figured it out, doesn't really work when she was being so obvious. Well, now she's mad at me and says I'm victim blaming, but I said I'm absolutely not. No one should have said anything. But she was being very obvious, and she really shouldn't pretend otherwise. So I really need to know if I was the jerk here, because at this point, I'm seriously not sure. No, you're definitely not the jerk. Your sister was being weird, and she's trying to claim that she's a victim of some kind. Like, no, this isn't victim blaming. What is she talking about? She's not a victim just because she got called out by her cousin for hiding her baby bump in such a dramatic way. Like, she was very clearly making it obvious that she was hiding something, so for her to suddenly act surprised like, oh my god, how did this happen? How did anybody figure out this mystery? Is not only hilariously naive, but also it's just really dumb, because seriously, it didn't do a good job of like not convincing people that you're pregnant. And you know what? I'm right there with everybody else. The fact that the cousin called her out at dinner was completely inappropriate. Like, that's a private conversation to be had on the side, because clearly your sister was not ready to share this with anybody. So I can understand where she's coming from in that regard, where she's probably like really embarrassed, and she probably feels really stupid for hiding it and thinking that she's hiding it in some kind of way, but like literally she should have known that she was being super obvious. So in my opinion, this is not your fault. You're not victim blaming because your sister is not a victim, and in my opinion, she's probably way more embarrassed than anything else. And that honestly is kind of her own fault, especially with how badly she was trying to hide the fact that she was pregnant. My entitled, stupid boss demands that we work overtime hours with literally zero work to do at the end of the day. So I decide to maliciously comply, resulting in him never asking me to stay late ever again. Here's what happened. So this happened a while back, but the memory still brings a smile to my face whenever I think about it. I used to work for a company where the boss had this habit of demanding that we stay late, even when there was absolutely no work left to be done in the office. It was one of those toxic environments where productivity was measured by hours you spent at your desk, rather than the actual output of your work. One day, after wrapping up all my tasks well before the end of the day, my boss came over and told me that I needed to stay late because that's just how things are done around here. Mind you, there was literally nothing left for me to do. Now, instead of arguing or trying to reason with him, I decided to play along with his ridiculous demand for overtime pay. So I nodded, I grabbed a book I had been meaning to read, and settled back into the chair. For the next 2 hours, I sat at my desk, flipping through pages, occasionally pretending to jot down notes and looking as busy as possible. At the end of those 2 hours, my boss came by to check on me, expecting to see me toiling away at some imaginary task, but instead he found me reading a novel. He looked at me puzzled and asked, "What are you doing?" With a straight face, I replied, "Well, you asked me to stay late, so I figured I might as well put in some overtime. This book has been on my reading list for quite a while." Needless to say, my boss was speechless. He couldn't really argue with me since he asked me to stay late and I was technically still on the clock. Well, from that day forward, he never asked me to stay late unless there was actual work that needed to be done, marking this as one of the few instances where malicious compliance was actually working at its finest. Yeah, that boss is really stupid for trying to make you stay late, because I am right there with the original poster. If there's no work to be done and you've done everything you need to do for the day, then there really is no point for you to stick around and have to work more just to make this guy happy. Like, at that point, it's just a massive waste of money for everybody involved, and it's a waste of time. Like, if they really want to pay me for staying late and actually doing work, then fantastic, let's get that done. But to make me sit there just for the sake of sitting there, and this is all probably for some secret agenda that your manager's trying to work towards, is just so cumbersome and weird, and it just doesn't help anybody in the long run. So honestly, I'm kind of sad that you got caught, because you could have gotten in some serious reading time on the clock. Because if this manager was really so stupid as to allow you to commit time theft, and with overtime hours at that, then it would have been great for you to capitalize on that for as long as possible. Today, I had my first worst day that I've ever had while working at this restaurant, and it honestly got so bad that it made me cry in front of my coworkers. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. I'm an 18-year-old female, and I've been a hostess at this restaurant for about 4 months now. now. And today was my first real serving day after 5 days of training. It was going great at first. We had some very sweet customers, but then I got sat 2 women who I could tell already were not happy. I was still able to keep up with my tables until the 2 women started complaining that their appetizer was cold. They also wanted a different one instead, and they wanted to add food. I had just gotten sat again, so it was starting to stress me out, and I began making some mistakes. Well, long story short, I forgot to shake up their margarita, so they assumed it was wrong, and that's my fault. And I forgot to tell them if they got 2 sides, one of the regular sides with their food would be replaced. So they had ordered 3 sides each, and only 2 came out. The first woman got incredibly upset and asked for a manager. She apparently talked a ton of garbage about me, so much so that my coworkers brought it up to me. As I was walking in the back, I heard my manager say, "I mean, bless her heart." And she was saying this to my coworker about me, so she must know that I'm doing badly. The main woman didn't end up tipping, which is fine, but the second one did tip about 22% and decided to write me a note. She said to me, "Don't be so stressed, you will do great," which immediately made me cry. So I'm sobbing as I'm still trying to take orders out, but my coworkers were so sweet and they kept trying to help, which made it impossible for me to stop crying because I felt so bad that they had to pick up my slack. I usually am not emotional. I mean, I haven't cried in months. So of course, it's in front of the people I have to see every single day. One of them even stayed behind to help me with my first closing, which added to the guilt that I felt. I caused them all to be behind because of me, and I'm sure my other tables suffered as well because I couldn't stay calm. It wasn't the worst day ever. I mean, it definitely could have been a lot worse, but I just feel like I'm horrible at my job. I just expected my day to have gone better, and crying in front of people that I'm not close with didn't help. It wasn't even like I got a crazy amount of customers. I had 3 table sections in total, and the most amount of people that I had sat at a table was maybe 4. So there wasn't even a good reason for me to be so stressed out. But I'm honestly so embarrassed that I cried in front of my coworkers that I now seriously don't know what to do. Okay, I'm gonna be real with you. If I had $1 for every time I walked away from work stressed or wanting to cry, especially when I was working in the restaurant industry, then trust me, I would be very rich. I don't care what anybody says, that line of work is incredibly stressful. Working in customer service, especially in the restaurant industry, is so stressful. There is so much that can go wrong so quickly. It is high pace, and chances are you're not going to be paid well. There are some exceptions to that rule, but honestly, the amount of work you put into that job doesn't always add up to a really good paycheck. If anything, it just adds up to you being stressed out of your mind. So I know if I was in your shoes, I would cut yourself some slack, especially when this is your first test in becoming a server. Like, you're gonna have those customers that come in and treat you like garbage, but I know whenever that happened to me, I would just remind myself that those people do not define my existence. They're just some miserable person who came in and decided to try and make you miserable, and you shouldn't let that define your work as a server, because at the end of the day, I'm sure you did just fine with every other table that you've ever served. And if you stick with it, I guarantee you these incidents will become much less in the future. My parents won't take ownership over their mistreatment of my wife, and after dealing with this for so long, I feel like I'm now at a crossroads and I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So my wife and I are in our 40s and we've been married for 20 years. We have one early teen son, and we recently moved back to my hometown about 2 miles from my parents. My wife has basically tolerated their behavior for years. They just seem to not like her at all. They interrupt when she speaks, they argue about small things that she says, they make comments about her under their breath, and manipulate to see their grandson. I've admittedly done a horrible job at standing up for her and confronting them, and instead, I just put my head in the sand. And that bad strategy is coming back to bite me now that they live nearby. Last Thanksgiving, my mom told my wife not to bother making food, because apparently nobody in her family likes what she makes, insinuating that my wife is not part of the family. My wife then did not come to any holidays, and my mom left on a 2-month vacation without resolving it, and now does nothing more but deflect and excuse her behavior. Instead of apologizing, she will send my wife occasional text messages saying that we need to talk, and then she'll get mad when my wife doesn't respond. At the same time, I realized how unhappy my wife was, and how I actually treat her in some of the same ways, all because of what was modeled for me. We were near divorce until I thankfully recognized this with the help of a therapist. I've changed a ton in a year, and have done the hard work of reconciling with my wife, who has been very forgiving and very gracious. But my parents still treat her the same way and just can't see it. They just think she is too sensitive, and the only person who has ever complained about the way we treat them, and that this is some mutual conflict that they should both apologize for. My mom even pulled out the old saying that the Bible says to forgive and forget, which is an old chestnut that she did last week. My mom asked to see our son every day via text message and wants me to spend time with her and my dad like we used to, just as if nothing is wrong. I've tried confronting them and explaining the situation many times, but I have serious doubts about their desire or capacity to change. My mom last time was just like, well, I saw a counselor once who told me to text her, and she's the one that's not texting back. I could easily explain to my mom what she's doing wrong and give her the exact script and a plan to actually apologize and repair, but that seems inauthentic and won't lead to lasting change. It's not my job to parent her, but we can't go on like this. I'm basically avoiding and ignoring them until I figure out what our relationship needs to look like, but I know that's not super mature or helpful. What should I do? Okay, first and foremost, if you really want to help out your wife, you can start by standing up for her. Like, why are you tolerating any of this behavior? If you actually changed and you're like a better husband, then you would be going to your parents and saying, hey, we're not coming over till you treat my wife right. Like, why are you not putting your foot down to be like, no, enough is enough, you're not talking to my wife like that? If this means burning bridges with your parents, in my eyes, if I was in your shoes, it would be worth it. Like, you've been with your wife for 20 years. How does she not take priority in your life? So in my opinion, I think you're being way too lazy when it comes to defending your wife, and if I was in your shoes, I would be stepping up to say something much sooner than later. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you want some chill music to put on in the background, check out easymode.com. If you like Am I the Jerk, subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.